Ready Fool posted that link that he shared in general. It's a painful read. It makes me want to smoke a cigarette. No Nut November, the insidious internet challenge encouraging men not to masturbate. What may appear to be just another weird and bizarre internet challenge is underpinned by extreme misogyny and threats of violence. And of course, they picked a chick to write about this.
You're a misogynist now, Mamo.
I know.
Extremely violent misogynist.
I'm an extremely violent, bigoted, sexist, hateful person now.
Well done to the
It's really just advertising, really, when you give it such good names.
Yeah.
These quotes, they sound like an army motivation aboard a triathlon training for Jimmy Stick Game of Fred. Background for the rules in November. November's popularity.
And they even mentioned Discord. They mentioned Discord servers that are doing NoFap.
Well, I don't get it. Where is she? Where in the article does she start slating NNN? I can't see it anymore.
I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, I can start wherever you want. This may initially appear to be your average dumb internet challenge, something bizarre and fleeting, like eating a teaspoon of cinnamon or chugging a gallon of milk within an hour. The type of online trend that, although perhaps unpleasant, is nothing but harmless. However, NNN is different. While some participating in the month-long abstinence period may be doing just that, simply participating, the challenge has a darker side and often dangerous consequences that affect more people than those just participating. She goes on, I spoke to Girl on the Net, a sex blogger who has written extensively on topics such as masturbation, sex positivity, and the effects of porn on our mental health. Key to the No Nut November philosophy, she shed a light on how No Nut November began. And then starts talking about the subreddit and all the shit that happened, I guess, in 2011. There's a lot of myth and misogyny mixed in with what is essentially a fairly harmless personal challenge.
I don't like this article.
No, it honestly just it's weird and it's annoying.
These people are crazy though.
It is.
No, these people are crazy. They can't make their minds up.
However, there are also plenty of people whose wanking abstinence ties in neatly with their misogyny. Like, I don't know how many married men are in this server right now who are recovering for their spouse. Doesn't sound like misogyny to me.
I've just read the last thing she said. Beyond the memes and pseudoscience and risible camaraderie lies a dangerous, active misogyny. That is a very fucked up statement. Misogyny is a hatred or contempt for women or girls. So she basically what she's saying is that not fapping breeds misogyny. Is that what she's saying?
No, no. I think what she's getting at is because I agree in somewhat to some of the points.
How?
Because I've seen this some times in some NoFap stuff and semen retention stuff. It's much softer. It is not as misogynist as she's putting it off. I think it can play into the pickup artist and red pill community, the NoFap. But I think in large part, it is way more for self-development and trying to get out of these bad mental habits.
Well, what I have like a counter argument in my perception of the situation is that these are people who came into this already misogynistic, already having poor perceptions of women, poor perceptions on sexuality, and are trying to recover. I think also, more often than not, we are going to find ourselves with people who are already on that conservative line of thought, who are even considering quitting. If we're, on average, this isn't always the case, but on average, we're going to see more people who are, I guess, more right politically leaning, having more conservative values than people who aren't. People who are, trying to be more progressive are trying to play out the porn fandom, if you will. They're trying to, I guess, discover that side. They're not opposed to it. They're trying to go to the full extent of that, not in a deliberate, spiteful sort of way, but it's just a different perspective. I think it's false to say that NoFap is sexist and bigoted. It's like no, these people ended up having bad ideas of how this shit works, and they're trying to recover. And now you're trying to piss on the whole thing, saying that no, it's the NoFap that makes people sexist or bigoted. I just disagree. I think this is an attempt to recover and heal different aspects of themselves, whether or not it helps to mend that sexism, which I think for the most part does. There's a lot of people who finally start getting into the dating scene after quitting, for sure. Even attempting relationships and trying to talk to people in here about that.
Wait, so like you're saying, like there are a lot of people who are like more conservative leaning, but it isn't necessarily bad. It's just a different viewpoint.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing more people who are conservative in these groups because that there's like a bit of an overlap, I guess, in ideology. To not be promiscuous kind of concept.
Oh, okay, I get that. I think
Well,
I think I was like, oh, thank you. I think when you said that, it kind of reminded me a lot about the kind of pickup artist community. I think pickup artistry necessarily in itself. 1 second, my parents call me.
Highly suggest to mute yourself. It's a tabletop discussion. Otherwise, it sounds like it's just three people having a discussion. We'd love to have your input. Yeah, they're saying that it's normal for whatever reason.
Yeah, but they never know what they even want to say, really. I mean, I go on these blogs because I'm pretty active and I see all these things. I've been hearing it for about years now. They say pornography is horrible and objectifies women. And then they say if you're a woman and you create pornography, that's empowering. You're making money from your body and that's an empowering thing to do. And go, girl, you capitalize on that. And then they'll say, you shouldn't watch lots of pornography or masturbate because you're objectifying women and that's a terrible, terrible thing. And then you say, oh, I'm going to stop. I've got a problem. And, they're still going to call you a crazy, radical, far-right extremist, angry, violent misogynist. You can never appease these people. They can't even make their own minds up. I mean, it's crazy to even engage with them at this point. I just see the headlines and just think how silly it all is.
Yeah, I mean that's the best thing to do, but it frustrates
me. Try not to take
me.
them seriously. I can't take these people seriously because they don't really have like a straight message. They're all over the place.
I mean I agree. At the same time, I feel like it makes me think of someone who's just like picking what arguments they want to go with based on how it fits them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is.
It's complete doublethink.
It is. I mean, Jesus, they have a girl here who's being interviewed and she sells her body for a living. I feel like that's not the correct person to be debunking NoFap. We're not, implementing a scientist here. We're not referencing articles, albeit you could reference articles, but we'd know based on what we've been reading that it's like not going to be statistically relevant or it's misconstruing the data. But it bothers me. It bothers me because I feel very passionate about this group. I feel like, you know what AA is, right? Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, we don't really have the same kind of network.
It is. It's the same kind of network, and I feel like these are people saying, "Oh, well, AA is bad for you." On a social level, it means that you're essentially an asshole. Like, I don't see it, but it's like saying AA makes you an asshole, not having been an alcoholic makes you an asshole. And what do you do? Like, besides just roll with the punches.
The real meat and potatoes is here. Hey, maybe if not beating off does make you an extreme misogynist, maybe that's what we should all hope to and strive to achieve.
You're right. I should quit my streak now. Go to town and see if that makes me a better person.
If that's the case, we need more people stopping. If NoFap makes you hate women and want to kill people and threaten violence, everyone should be on NoFap.
That's a great slogan.
That's an amazing takeaway.
Can that be my picket sign? Just reading the last 3 paragraphs. As bad as their science is, we were equally concerned with some of the imagery being used, X-Hamster tweeted, because they're not biased. It was no surprise to find that so-called NoFap movement has its roots in anti-gay, anti-women, anti-Semitic blogs. What? There's Jews in here. X-Hamster had already been a target. Yeah, right?
You don't beat off, you're a Nazi.
Oh my god, I'm a Nazi. I woke up at my 30-day streak and realized I was a Nazi.
Man, I didn't jerk off. I'm a Nazi now. Oh my god.
Oh no.
So silly. Silly people. That's her job though. Can you imagine? She's doing that for a living.
What, writing this article?
Yeah. That's so lame. That's when you've hit rock bottom. Calling recovering porn addicts Nazis.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an example of grasping for straws. Or maybe that's just how we have the Nazi Reformation, through NoFap. Somebody wanted to talk about something and it wasn't food.
Food.
What is that, James? Dude, why can't you respect?
Oh no, that was a joke. Don't
Okay.
actually talk about that.
Okay.
That was a joke. You have to talk about that. Dude, why can't you respect? You will never be a never fapper. Just a classic statement.
I like that the Everyday Health article had to shove in masturbation will make you go blind because people are really concerned about that.
Well, I think you should do a Q&A and just take a lot of questions.
Yeah, but I don't got any questions.
No, people can ask questions and you answer them.
That you can't masturbate too much? Am I reading this right? Myth number 5. You can masturbate too much. Masturbation only becomes excessive if it serves as an escape from problems in your relationship. If it begins to affect your health or if it turns into a substitute for real life experiences.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Additionally, if it causes physical soreness, emotional issues, problems with your relationship, or habituation issues. To me, it sounds like a cop-out, you know? If you can write down all the things that makes you not an alcoholic while you drink excessively, then you can just not call yourself an alcoholic because you don't have the key problems that you're supposed to watch out for.
How about this? So you know how animals have like annual breeding, annual breeding. They breed annually, like every spring or every summer or every winter, you know, depending on the climate they're like acclimated to and evolve to fit within. There's like different parts of the year where they have the most abundance of energy because that's when they're best suited to the environment. Like they have that abundance of energy and that's when they reproduce. And then for the other times of the year, like they don't reproduce because they don't have the energy because they're not like suited to the environment at that point of the year.
Like a
Like I
lot of
kind of,
animals will like have their times in spring more often than not.
yeah. So let's say like an animal lives in the desert and it has short fur, right? Or actually, let's say not say desert. Let's say that an animal lives in the mountains, right? And it has short fur. They're not going to be reproducing it in the winter when it's like cold and they don't have that abundance of energy. But when it's the summer and all the snow's gone and they've got shorter fur, they're probably going to be reproducing in the summer or in that time of year. Or if they had long fur, then maybe they would be reproducing at winter because that's when they're best suited to the environment and they have more energy. So I kind of figured that nowadays, like with all the resources, we don't have that anymore. We're just at like full energy all the time. So we can just like normally it would be like a seasonal thing and you'd reproduce. But now we just have all the resources, all the means. We can acquire them all so easily that we're not in like an energy deficit seasonally around the year. Like there's no one mating season when we have more energy than the other. It's like we're just full energy all year round now because we have everything we need all the time. And I was sick the past few days and I was like thinking like I don't have any urges while I feel ill because all my energy is like preoccupied, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm compromised. My energy is compromised. When you have like an excessive energy is when you're gonna get them reproductive urges. That's what I'm saying, guys. You got to get to the gym ASAP.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. What's interesting, most animals in the wild do have mating seasons, sometimes even two in a year. It really does depend on the species and their environment. There are very few animals, including humans, that are known or able to reproduce throughout the year, and it is based on often resources and resource scarcity. If they don't have to deal with, you know, a sudden loss of access to food, for example.
Yeah. So we don't have any of that really in this economic system. We've got everything. So we're always like, well, we're not always in the mood, but we can always go into the mood like without having to worry about survival. Like,
Yeah.
normally you wouldn't be able to do that if we were still in the trees.
Yeah, I think even
Just
some primates have mating seasons. I could look it up. Shits and giggles.
December is mating season. Nah, because otherwise everyone, the majority of people would be born in like November or some shit.
Yeah, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans. They can throughout the year. Lemurs, horses, hamsters, groundhogs, and minks have very long seasons. Hold on, I gotta get the door.
Chats. How we doing, chats? You good?
My lower back is screwed right now, bro.
Is that what you trained today?
Oh, no. Like, I've been doing some form that was like I was sticking my bum out, and like my back is reconditioned so that my bum is sticking out. So when I pull it back in, it's like sore. So now I'm trying to recondition my bum to being in the normal place, and it's
That
just my lower back
juicy
kills.
bunda. That fat, juicy bunda.
But yeah, my big nyash. Right. Hold on,
Was
let
he
me fill my
deadlifting?
water.
Was he
Sir.
deadlifting?
Who deadlifting what?
No, we're just talking about bunda. Continue, mammal. Continue.
Oh, I just pulled up animals that breed throughout the year. They really are just saying that it's primates, mostly primates. Here, I'll post the Wikipedia article. I'm kind of surprised.
Continue with the breeder.
Yeah, even wolves, they breed from late January until March. There's another thing called opportunistic breeders that only breed when conditions are favorable and not based on seasons.
What are we talking about?
Just comparing the accessibility to mate as humans compared to animals.
How the fuck have we got to this?
I think it's a related subject.
What's the animal that breeds the most,
Humans.
apart from us?
I mean, if you want to get technical, I would have said insect at first, but really they just like go at it a couple times and keep making babies.
Fuck insects, they don't count. What was that? There was a giant tortoise, I swear, on an island that impregnated like 200 other tortoises. It was in the news. I want to find that. I think his name was Diego. Yeah, we got Diego tortoise.
That's great.
900 offspring.
I like what Scoom said. Fuck your zodiac. Are you a continuous breeder, opportunistic breeder, or seasonal breeder? That's good.
This fucking tortoise has 900 babies.
That's impressive. 900.
Mm-hmm. Diego's a fucking chad.
Anyway, that was a fun little segue. The Pluses and minuses of being a continuous breeder. Think about what, Isaac? Celibacy for life? Celibacy is when you choose to abstain from sex. And it is typically a lifelong and spiritual decision. But not always. Do you have any questions? Because right now I'm waiting for. Oh, Overkill just asked, how do you guys cope with urges? The classic question.
I've heard a lot of high streak people saying that they don't cope with urges, they just try and let them pass through. Because it's a purely mental thing.
That is what I try to do. I
Obviously, your
think,
streak is quite high as well.
yeah,
So,
I think trying to be combative towards it, especially if it's really bad, you can get yourself into a rut. I think if you have it already set up in your mind before it starts to get overwhelming that you are not going to relapse and you are willing to do whatever it takes to survive the urge, you're a lot better off. Especially if you're prone to changing your mind. At least that works for me. And doing something like just changing the pace. I noticed a lot. I would deal with urges while working, and I wouldn't, really be feeling like the type of work I was doing at that time. So I'd have to just switch gears sometimes, either with work or getting up and taking a walk for a second, doing something else. Those are tools that I've used. Anybody else?
I mean, I can't really say anything. I relapse every day. So,
What do you think that is?
because I don't think my mind is truly committed to NoFap. That's the simple answer.
So once like the urges gotten to a point, you're like, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead and do this. I'm over it.
Pretty much. But I'm starting to realize that it's just a mental thing, and there's nothing really physical you can do about it. People can say drop to the floor and do 50 push-ups, but I've tried that, and so have many other people. And you get up, and the urges are still there. So I think trying to destroy the urges is just a complete way about going about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm on day 2, so I can't really say anything.
You said your highest streak was 17 days, though?
Yeah, but we already talked about that. I don't like to count it because of the circumstances.
Sure.
Actually, I
But you
think
do
it was
have
20
some
days.
room to talk. You have some room.
I don't think I do.
There was a time where you
Need to
cared
do-
enough.
James, mate, you need to get sick like me, and then you don't have the energy for
Sick
it.
like
That's what
you.
he said.
Gee, that's just a cope. That's a cope.
So what's usually the hardest days for you guys?
The first week or two.
Same. Well, yeah, you're always in
I
the
guess
first.
after
first
the
week.
first week or two, it does get so much easier. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just the first week is just so much harder, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the first 3 weeks are the hardest, and then kind of what happens for me is it's like smooth sailing, punctuated by like really uncomfortable urges, and then a few periodic like minor urges, if that makes sense. Like the big ones get worse, but they're so much less frequent, and then you have a few small ones that I mean are easy enough to ignore. I think this is a good everybody question. How do you maintain motivation to stay on NoFap?
Ooh. Just fear for me. Just fear of going back. Because I was in a bad place. Real bad. Yeah, it's fear.
That's relatable. I feel like I've just kind of made up my mind. This is not my first time doing NoFap. I did it once before, back in like 2016 or so. And I quit back then kind of as a mental reset. But now I guess I've changed my mind that there's no point. It was never doing me any favors. If anything, it caused me more problems, and I'd rather just not be about it. I don't like having any reason to escape anything. I'd rather just, be at peace with it. Whatever thing I don't want to deal with, or urge that's coming up, or feelings of loneliness, all the different reasons. I love you guys. Thank you so much for pinging me while I was trying to answer this question. Scoom, you may go ahead with your question now. So who here is feeling gay right now? That's the question we're having.
Go hell. Okay, retention says, porn turned me into a person I didn't like. I was a liar and a cheater, basically scum. I think about that person I would become for motivation.
For fuck's sake.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, high key prefer if you unmute, but you don't have to.
Like, you kind of have to.
Yeah, you have to, or you get ignored.
It's the whole point. It's the whole point of being in a VC. It's a voice chat. It's called a voice chat for a reason.
Oh, pressured.
I don't care. I'm fucking pressured. Talk.
Oh, you don't need to be like that, bro.
I wish I could. I don't have any peer pressure powers.
But who is it who's supposed to talk?
Okay, Isaac has a question.
No, he's fine. He doesn't have to talk. He's a nice guy.
I like this other question Overkill had. How has socializing helped or hindered your NoFap efforts? I am a girl. I'm kind of hyped that like my voice didn't give it away 100%, but I am a girl.
Wait, excuse me if I sound like an idiot, but are you a guy or a girl?
Yep. Do I sound a little dudeish?
No, you don't.
James, I hope you're not offended, mate. But are you a guy or a girl?
I'm gonna leave that question open for debate.
He's got a very
What's the
soft
debate?
voice.
You are or you aren't.
Retention said, it's helped me because I used to be a socially awkward person when I watched porn, but now I have better conversation skills.
That's so true. I had that so bad. That's my favorite benefit. Literally, I just become so much more confident and I'm like free. I don't know how to explain it in any other way other than saying like I'm just free to be myself, like because I have that confidence. I just way better in like social situations. So much. My favorite by far, my favorite benefit.
I think my favorite so far is like this clear conscience that I didn't know I was missing out on. Like I feel like I this whole time had like a secret side of me that I never really felt like I wanted to talk about and kind of justified. And now I don't have that problem at all. I feel like I don't know. All of me is present. There's not some secret part of death mammal. It's all right here. If that makes sense.
That
Well,
makes
because
perfect sense, actually.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I would say that one of the things is actually, believe it or not, socialization has both helped and hindered my NoFap efforts. So the ways in which I'll start out the ways in which it's hindered is that oftentimes when you have the I'm going to call it the Coomer mentality, uh, the mindset in which you're still doing it to a bunch of videos and stuff like that and porn. You have the mindset of objectification. So when you see somebody in the street or when you're talking to somebody, you're many times it doesn't feel like you're talking to a person, uh, but rather a sexual object. And when you have that mentality, it makes socializing with people is a little bit difficult because again, you're not thinking about the person, you're thinking about oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so amazing if fill in the blank sexual act. Uh, However, socialization has also helped in many ways because I found that when I am around people, number one, you don't really uh, jerk off or do anything like that in public, or at least most normal people wouldn't. So it gives you a sense of accountability when you're around people. And so you have that extra pressure, like, okay, don't touch, don't look at porn. You're in like a middle of a cafe or whatever. Like, don't do all that stuff. It's kind of like a little bit of healthy societal pressure in that regard. It's also helpful talking to others because it can also distract you from your urges or your thoughts or whatever. Because when you're talking to somebody about, let's say, sports or religion or politics or something like that, you're not thinking about fapping. You're thinking about the sport, the topic that you're discussing, or whatever it is that you're bonding with this person over. Even in the sense, doing study groups and things like that. Like if you're in college or high school or still in school, study groups also help with that as well because when you're talking with people, number one, it's time that you're not fapping or watching porn, and number two, it's when you're interacting with them, as long as it's not in a setting in which it's like one of those weird role play groups or whatever. If it's an actual productive group in real life, people that you're working with, your goal and your focus is on that topic, and it's not on fapping. So it's kind of a distraction. So I would say that socialization has helped in that aspect. But what are your guys' thoughts? Is there anything I missed? Anything that I needed to add, or something you might agree with?
I would say that that may be true, yeah. But my ability to socialize with people increases and gets a lot better when I'm on a longer streak. I'm just I'm more present. I'm I'm kind of more engaged in things, and when when I perceive people when I'm on like a longer streak, they're less of like I don't want to say like NPCs because it was never like, oh, this is just an NPC or anything like cringe like that. But it was like I never really looked too far deep into people. Like they would just be there and it would just be like you just talk to them. Now have, like, when you're on a streak, you just have like more interest into them, and you can develop a stronger connection. That's what I would say about socializing on a longer streak. You just build stronger connections. You can get on with people way better.
Yeah, I could say that I can vibe with that. Having deeper connections, um, feeling more inclined to have deep connections with people, I guess. I feel like a bit of an outlier though, because the moment I hopped onto the server, I just got super involved. So I don't know if I would be the right candidate for that question, because it would inevitably be biased since I.
What was the question?
So the question was, how has socialization hindered or helped your NoFap experience? So in other words, like, do you find it easier to maintain a longer streak when you're not around people or when you are around people? And what do you think, or how do you think that being around people affects your streak?
Depends on the people you're around, by far. You surround yourself with a monastery, it's going to help because you're going to have people that are helping in building good connections and building good pathways in your brain, doing good things in your life, building good habits. You hang around the wrong people and it's going to tempt you constantly. At the university right now, I'm finding it particularly difficult because there are a lot of the wrong people that have been around me. And those wrong people are very tempting. They often make those uh, offers, I guess you could say, and it makes it really difficult, especially as someone that doesn't want to say. I don't know like what the terms around like what we're allowed to say and what we aren't allowed to say in this. Like I don't know. Given we're
Oh,
talking
you can
about
say
sports,
everything.
I
You can
suppose.
say everything you want, man. You can go as far as you
Okay,
want.
like I don't want to have sex because I don't feel it's morally right out of wedlock. But on the other hand, yeah, I got a lot of Coomer mentality still. That's very problematic. So one thing for me, it's like people get me going, and then I don't want to do it with them, and then I have all that energy built up, and where does it go? So that part of socialization is pretty hard, like because people can really start to push you towards that. They can build up that energy in you. Uh, People's energies come together and they amplify each other. You know, that's the kind of thing that you have to worry about with socialization. Honestly, I
Yeah.
find the socializing's good. You just got to make sure you're with a good crowd because it can be bad for you too.
Well, exactly.
You want
Socializing
to
is not
find
going to
people you
help if
surround
you're
yourself with.
socializing with people who are like encouraging that kind of stuff. So yeah, make sure
Yeah.
you socialize with the right people.
And that's why I'm
Yeah,
a
don't stick it.
no lifer mammal, because I socialize with all the right people here.
Hey, mainly me.
I wish. You're not on enough.
Yeah, because so I got another question. Out of curiosity, how many people in here are attending either college or high school, or I don't know, maybe we got some middle schoolers in here. How many of you guys like are still in a
I'm
school setting?
17. I'm in A level, so I'm in my final year. I'm not in like university. It's my final year of like it's year 13, or what you'd call like 12th grade. So
Okay.
that's where I am.
All right. So, out of curiosity, for all those of you who are still in the education system in some way or form, how do you guys? All right, because if I remember correctly, there was a lot of statistics that linked stress to urges. So, how do you guys cope with the stress of school playing into urges? Like, what are some of the methods that you guys have developed, or maybe need to work on, to cope with the question? I mean, not question. To cope with the stress associated with the due dates and getting an education.
I can share a bit of my story. So like raw legit, our like I guess you want to call it health, like 7 to 12 health courses and shit back in the day, they honest to God recommended, if you're stressed, to masturbate. Like that was unironically something that was put forward to us. So it was the kind of thing where
Oh
like
my days.
a lot of us did, and it's just like obviously it just made that loop of you get stressed, you have that urge, you do that. So it's been like a brutal thing to try and break out of. I still find those urges are mostly caused by that, and it's hard too because it means you have to develop those. If you're the type of person that, fat because you were stressed out, I find, at least for myself, it's really hard to get out of it because those urges peak back in, and like your stress response is a lot higher when that's been built and tied together for so long. So I don't know, but I'd like to see what ye have for it. Honestly, I find like that's the kind of thing where you get really grateful for when you're on a longer streak because that stress starts to fade away. It really sucks when you come back down to a low streak again. So I like to see if anyone's got any ideas for that.
Well, Soapy just mentioned they plan out study time so they know exactly what they have and when they need to have it by, and that helps them manage stress. And I think stress management is a fantastic tool so that you don't get to that point in the first place. But that's Soapy Retention's suggestion.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, get like a schedule so you can manage things. If you have a schedule, you're less likely to have a build up of stress because chances are you've already pre-planned everything you need to do and got it done, and you're not going to have mountains of work piling on top of your head because you're stuck to a schedule that worked. Make a schedule that helps.
And another thing that I would also suggest too is to find the joy in studying. Because, let's be honest, I remember, I'm pretty sure a lot of people might feel the same way, but back in grade school, because I'm now attending community college, but back in grade school, I didn't really like a lot of the classes. And because of that, it took a heavy toll on my grades in those classes. It made those classes more stressful. And it just basically made the experience, that much worse, which ended up also leading to higher rates of PMO whenever I had to do something extreme for those classes. So one thing that I would say is to also find the joy in all the classes. You may not be a math person, but if you're taking a bunch of math classes, instead of looking at, all the amounts of works that you have to do and saying, oh my gosh, I got a boatload of work to do, think of it instead as tools that you can use for later. So in other words, it's like, oh my gosh, this week I'm going to be learning about, let's say, function notation. Learning that in math. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so cool because when I'm done, I can apply that in so many ways. I'm going to learn this not because I have to, but because it's going to be really, really cool and really, really fun. When you think about school that way, and education that way, when you think about it, instead of seeing a pile of work you have to do, but instead seeing a pile of potential, things that could help you in the future, things that could be really, really cool, that lowers the stress level of the homework and the assignments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
School is a lot less stressful when you're succeeding, and it's very rewarding to be failing in school and then, well, not say failing, but to not understand something and then learn how to do it and become very skilled at it. Like I was like in chemistry, we're doing like rates of reaction. There's this Arrhenius equation which you can basically just tells you like the rate constant, which I won't go into it. But at first, like it was really hard. Didn't understand any of it. You just stick with it and persevere it. Well, when you go from getting all the questions wrong and not understanding it, to getting the questions right, understanding it, getting most of the questions right, and then scoring well. That's like, you can observe your progress. It's rewarding. Like, it's actually fun to learn, you know?
Yeah, I think there's another layer of stress where it's just defeat. You're already trying your best, or as far as you feel like you're trying your best, and you're not where you're hoping that you're going to be, and you're having to deal with a different type of stress where it's like failure related stress, and dealing with that on an emotional level. I think that's something that often happens. It's not just studying and getting your classes right. It's dealing with other people or dealing with your family, and kind of having to come across situations that you don't have that much control over, and having the right mindset about it. And I can only speak for myself because I feel like I've gone through a lot. I just lost my dad, got through a divorce. I've had to quit my job, trying to look for another job, and this is all in the past couple months. So I feel like I can speak a lot about stress, and I can't give everybody the perfect advice for how they can manage that stress that they have to go through, but you can go ahead and make that decision that today I'm not going to relapse. And as long as you kind of have this realization on the forefront that relapsing is never going to make your stress better. It's only going to make you feel worse about yourself, which is the last thing that you need if you're already stressed. Don't add to the pressure. That's the most logical, fail-safe thing I can give you. It's never going to make it better. Remember that. So if you're dealing with an urge and you're dealing with stress, be like, wait a minute. If I fuck up here, this shit's going to make me feel worse about it. It's going to make me feel worse about that and worse about myself. So
The relapse really doesn't help. Like, if you're stressed and things are falling apart around you, it's just another thing that's falling apart. Your resolve to quit something is falling apart. You just feel even more inferior. Like, relapsing is just adding more problems. Just keep that in mind. Like, if you've already got problems, relapsing is just making more for yourself. Honestly.
yeah, you only make the problem worse. You don't handle the issue at hand until you really decrease your self-worth, and you have to fall back on whatever streak that you did have, whether it was a couple days or a couple hours. It's just never going to be worth it. It's going to make you feel worse. Somebody else mentioned they also make it.
Sorry
Sorry.
about that. When you stop speaking, I thought that you'd stop speaking. Yeah, I was going to say, when you keep your streak, whether it's the only thing that you're able to keep up, it builds commitment. It builds character. It's something where you can look at yourself. I think that comes back to it, being able to look at yourself at the end of the day. That's one of the biggest things that prevents stress, because, if you're able to be grateful for something, then it makes you feel a lot better. That's one thing that takes a lot of the stress out of your day. If you can at least fall back on yourself, be confident that you're doing this one thing.
That is exactly what it was for me. Because I've just spent days of being depressed. I mean, it's pathetic to mention, but I felt like as long as I didn't fuck this one thing up, I'd get to keep that. And now things are finally going into motion for me. I have an interview tomorrow. I've got my portfolio together. I have a resume ready. So if this job doesn't work out, I can find another job. And I have my streak. So just by holding on to that one thing, I feel like I managed to get the two things that I was really looking for, and I can finally get that ball rolling for my life. Someone also mentioned that they like to make their schedule and life flexible in case life gets in the way. I think that's referring strictly to the studies and stuff, but I wanted to mention that before we went on to any other questions. Any more answers?
So I got a question for like all the people in the chat, because I think this could be potentially helpful.
Can I get to one question that somebody asked earlier?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is being an introvert bad or good, as they hate going out? What are your thoughts?
Listen,
It's neutral.
Yeah.
it is new. It is.
Because here's the thing,
Everybody-
like there's pros and cons. Like if you're an extrovert, when it comes time where it's like everybody has times where they gotta be in public with a bunch of people and times where they gotta be alone and by themselves, right? And so if you're an extrovert and you end up at a point where you're alone, it's going to be a lot harder to cope with urges to masturbate and things like that without people around. Whereas if you're introverted, you probably have more success when you're alone. Plus, in regards to like socializations, like we were talking about earlier, when you socialize with people, a lot of times like you don't masturbate when you're around them. Granted, if you're around the wrong type, you might masturbate after you leave their presence or whatever. But you don't do it when you're around people. So even if you're introverted, it still has a pro in that sense, in that you can better handle urges when you're alone, and everybody naturally typically handles urges when they're in the presence of somebody else. And so don't be ashamed of being an introvert, because there's a lot of hidden benefits to that. However, as all introverts know, there are also cons. It's harder to talk to people. It's harder to enjoy time with other people, especially when they're annoying, things like that. But it's definitely a neutral thing. But in regards to NoFap, it does have, I would say, it tends to have slightly more pros than cons.
As a whole, being an introvert or an extrovert is just you. It's one part of you, and that's not something that you can really change. It's the kind of thing that you don't really want to change, in my opinion. It's something where you should be focusing on other parts of your life and how to improve. You can work on certain parts where, tolerating people in your days. Because another thing is you may not be an introvert. You just may be surrounded by people that you don't like, live in a way that's problematic, and you can see that. I mean, there are a lot of people I've known, and myself included. I still don't know if I'm an introvert or if I just don't like being around certain people of a certain stripe. Because, I find myself around a lot of postmodernists, and I just find them insufferable. And I don't want to be around them, so I'd rather be alone. Does that mean I'm an introvert, or does it just mean I don't like being around people like that? That's something you
I
might
think that just
have
means
to
you're
ask yourself
repulsed
as well.
by postmodernists.
Yeah, definitely could. I definitely noticed that, because if I'm around a bunch of other indigenous people, I find it very good and very positive. So that's something where it's like, for me, that's a big one. Just knowing who's surrounding you. That's another thing you can just reflect on, I guess.
Yeah, another thing too is that, especially for the younger people who might be asking some of these questions, I will say that once you start coming towards the end of puberty, you will see that there will be a lot of changes in who you are as a person. So, like, for example, first time I took the Myers-Briggs test, I was, I think, 11. And I was introverted, intuitive, thinking, judging, according to Myers-Briggs. Then I took it about, I think it was sometime last year, maybe slightly before the pandemic. Can't quite remember, but it was more recent than that one. But when I took it for the second time, I came out as extroverted, intuitive, thinking, judging. So as you get older, oftentimes, some of this stuff might change. Like you might go from completely introverted to more of an extrovert, and maybe vice versa. Maybe if you're an extrovert and you're just around insufferable people, it might cause you to become introverted. Like there's a lot of different psychological, sociological stuff that goes into the extrovert versus introvert stuff. But again, I think that Draco has a great point there. The point is not so much whether you're introverted or extroverted, but rather, who do you surround yourself with? Do you surround yourself with people that will, cause you to grow and become a better person, or are you going to surround yourself with people that just bring out the worst side of you? I think that that's the more important question we should be asking in regards to introvert and extrovert. Because, hey, let's be honest, even introverts need a friend.
Yeah, the way I've been told is that extroverts get energy being in social situations, and introverts lose energy being in social situations. But I really think that it's like what you were saying, that it depends on the people that you're around and how comfortable you feel with them. Because depending on what friend groups I have, I'm either like ready to stay all day, or I'm only going to be good for about 2 hours, and then I want to go home.
Yeah, because it's the other thing, like what I was saying. Being around people you don't like will sap your energy fast. Like whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, having to be around people that you don't like is a draining thing. So it's the kind of thing where it's like find people that are going to fill your cup, make your life better. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So I got a question for everybody in the chat who's listening, because I think that this is something that we all need to answer to a certain extent, or that would be helpful for everybody to answer for themselves. So what was, well, the question is twofold. What was one thing that this past week that hindered your NoFap efforts, and one thing that helped? And what is one thing that we can do next week that will be better?
One thing that hinders it, females.
Or
I second that point.
third, mate.
Yeah. Fine.
Come on, James. Women make you coon.
I'm not going to go into any more detail because
Yeah, especially if people come on to you. That's really hard for me. People that like come on to you, and if you don't know how to put up your barrier, just be like, you know what, not interested right now. That's a big thing as well. Just like try and get out of those situations and don't get yourself set up in them. One big thing is trying to find a place full of healthy people. That's a good one. Like I've been going to Mass more again. So that's one where it's like, I know there's no one that's going to tempt me to coom in Mass. For God's sakes, whether you enjoy Mass or God or not, it's the kind of thing where it's like you find a place where that's not going to be the dominant thing. That's not even going to be a side thing. That's the kind of thing where it's like, you know, I guess you can say find like a book club that's like die hard for the books, because that's the kind of thing where you just want to find that place where you can really grow and not have to worry about those temptations or what have you.
Real.
And Soapy Retention said that he was trying to get this girl when he found out that she didn't like him. But I guess the thing that got me through it was my friends and this server.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to go through.
it will always hurt. It's always going to hurt. But once you get past the phase of realizing that there's so many more girls out there, you just won't care.
Yeah, the sting gets less and
there's
less
so
over
many
time. It really does. As a girl who's put themselves out there and tried to get into relationships with people, yeah, it does get easier.
Okay, man. Well, this isn't
Yeah,
really.
especially if you're in like a really big country or a big city. Like I come from a community of like 300 people, so I'm like, for me, it could be hard, especially when stuff's like that. But you have to remember that saying that there's plenty of fish in the sea is so true. And like people around you, you have to remember, like, unfortunately, the way things are today, a lot of the people you're going to find aren't going to be healthy for you. So sometimes if someone rejects you, it's probably for the better, because you'd probably be miserable with that person, or would that person would probably drag you down. It's the kind of thing where it's like you look at people that rejected you in high school and look where they are now. You know, coming from someone that's working at a university now, I'm pretty glad a lot of these people rejected me, because outside the way that their lives turned out. So don't be too down about it. Keep your head high because it's probably for the best.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, honestly, I haven't been in like many official relationships, but the few potential people that I did have, most of them either ended up turning out to be really, really just horrible people in general, and it was like a relief that we lost contact, or some of them that weren't horrible people, they ended up, uh, strangely enough, getting pregnant by some other dude. So again, it was a much better thing that I was rejected. But I will say though that because you had also said that this isn't a be all end all thing, and that's a really good mentality to have. Just understanding that you know this while someone did reject you, you're not like holding on to it so much that it's like actually like, or at least it doesn't seem like you're holding on to it to the point where it's going to be like super hindering, kind of like when some baby's holding on to their pacifier, so that's a great thing, and I'm proud of you for that, brother. Michael Jordan said that they saw a podcast of Karina Kopf and heard that she opened an OnlyFans and became ultra. And then you did push-ups till failure, and then plank, and had a cold shower, and totally forgot about it. Good job, my dude. Keeping up with that. So one last question from my end, or at least I don't know if it's the last, but it's the one that's only on my mind right now. So, what is one thing this week that we can do that would help our streaks? For those of you who relapsed this week, like I did, what is something that you can do better this coming week? And for those of you who didn't relapse this past week, what is something that you can do better to make it easier or to maintain your streak?
I think it's such a hard question because I think we all know the answer, but when it comes to the situation and the urge is present, some of us just lose focus of the reason why we started NoFap and we give in. So I think we all know the answer, but when the urges come, we sort of lose sight of why we shouldn't do it.
That's a good answer.
Wow. Personally, I've never lost sight of why.
So what do you think is the issue if you've never lost sight as to why? Like why relapse if you don't forget?
The reason I relapse most of the time now, it's circumstances, like I had a late night, or I watch like YouTube for too long, like I'm unproductive, or I'll be chatting to girls too much. So stuff like that happens. Like I lost my 80-day streak because I got quarantined, like not because I lost track of why I stopped. I think the best thing you can do if you're in that cycle of relapsing is just love yourself and not beat yourself up.
I feel like, though, if I may,
definitely.
if at those moments is when you lose sight, you're kind of choosing, okay, well, this time, I will. Okay, this situation, I will. It's not like you're being that deliberate when you go into it, but you find yourself in that situation where I guess on an emotional level, you kind of lose fortitude, you lose sight of why you mean to stop.
Well, when it's like that, it's usually because I'm at a point where I overcome a lot more easily. Like when I relapse, not because I want to, or I'll relapse with the knowledge that I don't want to be doing this at all. I'll just carry on, just because I'm overwhelmed by the desire. Usually, it's strong because of something that I've not been taking care of, like sleeping properly or
Same.
or something like that.
Yeah, and I know that for me, like, what got me this past week was a combination of stress. I was also quarantined because of some potential COVID person that went to an in class in the same Florida I went to. So I had to quarantine. So I missed a week of work, which meant a week of pay. And on top of that, I had some issues with one of my classes where I had to switch it due to the fact that the one I was originally signed up for needed the one I'm currently doing as a prerequisite. So I had to catch up on a lot of that work. And for me, the stress just got to me. But I think that one of the biggest uh, reasons why I had relapsed this past week was mainly when it came time to dealing with urges. Like, I didn't follow through in doing what I needed to uh, take preventative measures so that way those urges wouldn't become into reality. And so I know that for me, like this week, one thing that I'm going to work on more is being more physically active to maintain that release of dopamine in order to alleviate the cravings for PMO. And just for the heck of it, this week I'm going to do more media fasting and more reading. I'm not going to be watching as much shows or YouTube or political commentaries, things like that. Because I know that for me, I like to listen to all of that, but there are some times where I know that when I'm filling my head with a bunch of stuff like that and I'm not filling it with either something productive like a book or something related to God or Christianity, my mind is oftentimes where it's not supposed to be. So I know that I need to start getting refocused and also work on a more steady physical routine for that dopamine. That's one thing that I'm going to be working on this week. Michael Jordan said, quit social media. Sir Isaac Newton said, stay busy. Soapy Retention said, I know that when fat prime time is for me, so I'm going to try and do everything to combat my inner cooming during horny hours. Question: do we still have one of those like personal goal channels?
Yeah.
Which channel?
Personal challenge.
Oh, I see it. Development. So, what if just for the heck of it, this week we all post one thing that we're going to do this week as a personal challenge, in hopes of, for those of us who relapsed this past week, in hopes of making it through this coming week. For those of you who didn't relapse last week, what you can do in hopes of maintaining your streak through this upcoming week. And I guess next support group meeting, we can go over, okay, did we accomplish that challenge? Did we fail? What are some of the things we can adjust? Like, what are your all's thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, that's great. That is good. And we should all do that. We should all go in the personal challenge and set a challenge. All right. Okay.
All right, well, that was a good session. We actually went overtime.
Waking up. I think waking up on the right time every day is probably one of the great ones.
Yeah.
That's
No.
probably my thing. Wake
Every
up 5
time.
o'clock every morning.
Yeah. No. Every time I wake up, naturally, without an alarm, the urge always hits me when I wake up, and I'd say at least 95% of the time I'll relapse because I'm in bed and I'm all tired and groggy from waking up. And it's so easy just to do it right there. So waking up with an alarm, I think that's the first way of just preventing an urge.
I've been studying random languages for too long. I saw in the chat, Sophie Retention said, thank you guys so much. I love you all. And I saw it said, no homo, but I read it as no homo. And I'm like, for fuck's sakes, that's not just like, I'm like looking at this like, what language is this in? Like, am I reading some Sanskrit words or something? I'm studying Sanskrit right now. I'm able to at my university. It's strange they normally don't offer it, but yeah, no. I totally read no homo as if it was like some fucking indigenous or Sanskrit word. I'm fucking studying too much.
Don't worry, bro. I feel you right there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is a good session. Thank you guys.
No problem.
See everyone
Yeah.
next week.